What if history is not what you think? For years, people believed that Ashkenazi Jews came from the Middle East. But a shocking theory says they might be the lost descendants of the Khazar Empire, a kingdom that mysteriously vanished. Could modern Jews have roots in a forgotten nation? New DNA studies and ancient records reveal a hidden truth that could change history forever. Stay with us, because what you are about to hear will shock you. Imagine a vast land stretching between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. The year is 750 CE, and the world is changing fast. In the east, the mighty Abbasid Caliphate is expanding. In the west, the Byzantine Empire struggles to hold its power. Between these giants, a lesser-known kingdom rises, a kingdom that will one day be at the center of one of history's most shocking debates. This is the Khazar Khaganate, a mysterious and powerful empire that would leave behind a legacy wrapped in secrets, faith, and controversy. For centuries, the Khazars remained in the shadows of history. They were a fierce and strategic people, neither fully European nor fully Asian. Their empire stretched across modern-day Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan, controlling vital trade routes that connected the East and West. Every caravan of silk, spices, gold, and silver passed through their lands, making them one of the richest powers of their time. They were warriors, skilled in battle, feared by their enemies. The Khazars clashed with the Arab caliphates, fought with the Rus, early Russians, and played the Byzantines like a game of chess. They did not bow to any empire. Instead, they did something no one expected. They chose their own path, one that would shock history forever. One of the most mysterious events in history happened in the 8th century. The Khazars, a pagan people, did something unheard of. Their rulers converted to Judaism. It was not a slow change, not a mix of cultures. It was a full transformation. The Khazar elite, including their king, the Khagan, embraced Jewish beliefs, customs, and traditions. But why? Some say it was a political move. The Khazars stood between two powerful forces, the Christian Byzantines and the Muslim Abbasids. By choosing Judaism, they avoided taking sides in a religious war. They remained independent, powerful, and untouchable. Others believe something deeper happened. They argue that the Khazars were influenced by Jewish traders and refugees who passed through their lands. Perhaps, over time, the wisdom of the Torah and the stories of Israel's past touched their hearts. Perhaps, in secret, they had long admired the faith of the Israelites, seeing in it a divine truth. Whatever the reason, the Khazar conversion was real, and it changed the course of history. The Khazars were now Jews, but they were unlike any Jewish kingdom before them. They did not come from Jerusalem. They had no ties to the ancient land of Israel. Yet they adopted the laws of Moses, observed Jewish customs, and ruled as a proud Jewish empire in the north. Imagine this: a mighty king in the heart of Eurasia, wearing royal robes embroidered with Hebrew script. Courts filled with Jewish scholars debating the Talmud. Soldiers riding into battle under a banner that bore symbols of their new faith. The Khazar Kingdom was a living paradox. A Jewish empire with no connection to ancient Israel, yet deeply tied to Jewish identity. But the world was changing, and the Khazars' rise would not last forever. As centuries passed, the Khazars found themselves surrounded by enemies. The once mighty empire began to weaken. The Rus, a growing force from the north, wanted their lands. The Abbasids never forgot their defiance. The Byzantine Empire, though once an ally, had its own ambitions. By the 10th century, the mighty Khazar Empire was crumbling. Their cities burned, their people scattered. Their story should have ended there. But some say it did not. Some believe that the Khazars did not vanish. They simply changed their identity. This is where history and mystery collide. Some historians claim that as the Khazar Empire fell, many of its Jewish people fled west, merging with Jewish communities in Europe. Over time, they became part of what we now call the Ashkenazi Jews. But is this true? Did the descendants of the Khazar warriors become the ancestors of millions of Jewish people living today? Did they carry their faith into Europe, blending into communities that would later become central to Jewish history? And most importantly, what does this mean for the Jewish connection to Israel? These questions spark heated debates to this day. Some say the Khazar theory is a myth, a distortion of history. Others insist that the truth has been hidden for centuries. One thing is certain: the Khazars were real. Their conversion to Judaism was real, and their disappearance remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Today, Israel stands as the historic homeland of the Jewish people. Today, Israel stands as the historic homeland of the Jewish people, the land of Abraham, Moses, and King David. But if the Khazar theory is true, it raises a complex question. Do some Jewish communities have roots in an empire that had nothing to do with ancient Israel? As the fires of war consumed the Khazar lands, thousands of their Jewish inhabitants were left with no home. Some sought refuge in the Islamic world, while others turned westward, toward Europe. This is where the great mystery begins. Did the fleeing Khazars merge with Jewish communities in Europe, becoming the ancestors of Ashkenazi Jews? Some historians argue that they did. Others claim that Ashkenazi Jews came directly from the Middle East, settling in Europe long before the fall of Khazaria. But one thing is certain: as the Khazars disappeared, the Ashkenazi Jewish population in Europe began to rise. For centuries, Jewish merchants had traveled across Europe and the Middle East, carrying goods, ideas, and traditions. They spoke multiple languages and had strong networks that stretched from Spain to Persia. Some historians believe that these Jewish traders helped the fleeing Khazars integrate into European Jewish communities. But was this migration large enough to shape the future of Ashkenazi Jews? If true, this means that a once powerful empire of warriors left behind more than ruins. They left behind a legacy hidden in bloodlines. Arab, Persian, and Byzantine historians wrote about the Jewish Khazars. Some described them as a people scattered after their fall. Others suggested that Khazar Jews settled in places like Poland, Hungary, and Germany. But direct evidence of a mass migration is missing, leaving the theory open to debate. Modern genetic studies have added another layer to the mystery. Some research suggests that Ashkenazi Jews have genetic links to the Middle East, supporting the traditional view of Jewish migration from Israel. However, other studies show small traces of Central Asian DNA, which could hint at a Khazar connection. So, what does this mean? Were the Khazars a forgotten branch of the Jewish family tree? Or did they vanish, leaving only a legend behind? This is where the debate takes an even more intense turn. If some Ashkenazi Jews have Khazar roots, what does this mean for their connection to Israel? For centuries, Jews have traced their ancestry to Abraham, Moses, and the ancient land of Israel. But if the Khazar theory is true, it suggests that at least some Ashkenazi Jews had ancestors who were converts rather than direct descendants of the ancient Israelites. Does this change anything? Not necessarily. Jewish identity has never been based solely on bloodline, but also on faith, culture, and history. The Ashkenazi Jewish story, whether tied to Israel, Khazaria, or both, is one of survival, resilience, and deep connection to Jewish tradition. Despite all the research, we may never have a definitive answer. The fall of the Khazar Empire and the rise of Ashkenazi Jewry remain two separate but strangely connected events in history. Whether the Khazar Jews truly became part of the Ashkenazi lineage or not, their story remains one of the most fascinating mysteries in Jewish history. One thing is for sure: the truth is never simple, and history is never fully written. And so, the greatest mystery remained. Who were the true ancestors of the Ashkenazi Jews? History had left behind clues, stories, and records, but now, in the modern era, we had something that ancient scholars could never have imagined: DNA science. Could genetics finally provide the answers that had eluded historians for centuries? Could it prove, once and for all, whether the Ashkenazi Jews were direct descendants of the ancient Israelites, or if they carried the legacy of the Khazar Kingdom? Scientists began studying the DNA of Ashkenazi Jews with one goal in mind: to trace their origins. If the Khazar theory were true, there should be significant Central Asian or Turkic markers in their genetic code. If it were false, the DNA should point back to the Middle East, to Israel, to the ancient land of their forefathers. The results were groundbreaking. Genetic studies overwhelmingly showed that Ashkenazi Jews share strong Middle Eastern ancestry. Their Y-DNA, passed from father to son, traced back to the Levant, the region of Israel, Palestine, and surrounding areas. This meant that the male lineage of Ashkenazi Jews had deep roots in the ancient Jewish world. However, there was still something unusual. When scientists analyzed the mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, which is passed from mother to child, they found something surprising. Unlike the male lineage, which clearly pointed to the Middle East, many of the maternal lineages seemed to have European origins. What did this mean? And here, history and science came together. The DNA suggested that Jewish men from the Middle East traveled into Europe, particularly to places like Italy, Germany, and France. But instead of only marrying within their own community, many of them married local European women who later converted to Judaism. This explains why Ashkenazi Jews have a Middle Eastern paternal lineage but a more mixed maternal lineage. So, did the Khazars contribute to the Ashkenazi gene pool? The evidence suggests that if they did, it was a very small contribution. While tiny traces of Central Asian DNA exist in some Ashkenazi populations, it is not nearly enough to suggest that they were primarily descended from Khazars. And yet, despite the overwhelming DNA evidence, the Khazar theory refuses to die. Some still argue that Ashkenazi Jews are not truly connected to the ancient Israelites. Why? First, the Khazar theory was politicized. Over the years, some groups have used it to argue that Ashkenazi Jews have no historical connection to Israel. They claim that modern Jewish populations are not truly descended from the Israelites, but instead from converted Khazars, suggesting that their return to Israel in the 20th century was not a homecoming. But history and genetics tell a different story. The ancient Jewish connection to Israel is well documented, not only in religious texts, but in archaeology, historical records, and now in DNA. The Jewish people were scattered, exiled, and displaced, but their roots remained in the land of Israel. The Ashkenazi Jews, like Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews, share that ancient bond. And so, the truth becomes clear. Ashkenazi Jews are not simply the descendants of European converts or Khazar warriors. They are the children of Israelite men who carried their faith, their traditions, and their bloodlines across continents. They survived wars, exiles, and centuries of persecution, yet their identity never faded. They remained Jewish, and their connection to Israel remained unbroken. The political controversy, why the Khazar theory refuses to die. And so, the debate over Ashkenazi Jewish origins took a darker turn. What started as a historical and scientific discussion soon became something else, a political weapon. The Khazar theory was no longer just about tracing ancestry. It became part of a much larger battle, one that questioned the very legitimacy of Jewish identity and the Jewish connection to Israel. For centuries, Jews have faced accusations and conspiracies about their origins. In medieval Europe, they were blamed for plagues, financial crises, and even wars. In the modern world, the attacks changed but never disappeared. One of the most damaging claims was this: Ashkenazi Jews are not real Jews. They are Khazars, and they have no right to Israel. This claim, repeated by anti-Semitic groups and political activists, was not just about history. It was about erasing the Jewish people's ancient connection to their homeland. If Ashkenazi Jews were not truly descended from the Israelites, then some argued they had no historical claim to the land of Israel. But this argument ignores a crucial fact. Jewish identity is not based on DNA alone. Judaism has survived for thousands of years through faith, culture, and shared history. And no amount of historical revision can change the reality that Jews, Ashkenazi, Sephardic, Mizrahi, all share a deep, unbreakable bond with Israel. And yet, despite overwhelming genetic and historical evidence, the Khazar theory refuses to die. Why? First, it is a convenient narrative for those who oppose Israel. By claiming that Ashkenazi Jews are Khazars, some political groups argue that Jewish migration to Israel in the 20th century was not a return, but an invasion. This ignores the fact that Jewish communities have lived in Israel for thousands of years, even during periods of exile and diaspora. Second, some people simply love alternative history. The idea that a lost kingdom of Jewish warriors existed in Central Asia is fascinating. It captures the imagination. Some historians, even those with no political motives, have explored the Khazar hypothesis simply because it is an intriguing story. And while intellectual debate is healthy, the problem arises when fiction is presented as fact. And so, Jewish scholars and historians continue to defend the truth. Israeli researchers, along with leading geneticists and historians worldwide, have dismantled the Khazar myth time and time again. They point to DNA evidence, ancient texts, and migration records that prove the Jewish people have Middle Eastern origins. But the battle is not just academic. It is deeply emotional. For Jewish people, the claim that they are not real Jews is an attack on their very identity. It is a denial of their history, their ancestors, and their suffering. Israel, as the modern Jewish state, stands as a living testament to Jewish resilience. It is not built on myths or fabrications, but on the undeniable reality that the Jewish people have always belonged to this land. From the time of King David to the present day, Israel has been at the heart of Jewish faith and culture. No amount of historical distortion can change that. And so, the truth remains. The Ashkenazi Jews are not Khazar imposters. They are descendants of the ancient Israelites, just like Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews. Their journey took them through Europe, but their origins never changed. They carried Israel in their hearts, in their prayers, and in their traditions. The Khazar theory may continue to circulate, but history, science, and faith all tell the same story. The Jewish people are one people, and their connection to Israel is unbreakable. DNA does not just tell us about the past, it tells us about survival. It tells us about a people who, despite the odds, held on to their heritage. Whether in ancient Jerusalem, medieval Spain, or the shtetls of Eastern Europe, the Jewish people always remembered where they came from. And now, science confirms what history has always known. The Jewish story begins in Israel, and it never truly left. And so, we reach the final question, the one that has sparked endless debates, conspiracies, and historical battles. Are the Ashkenazi Jews truly the descendants of the Khazars? Or is this just another distortion of history? The answer is now clearer than ever. No, Ashkenazi Jews are not Khazar descendants. The scientific, historical, and archaeological evidence overwhelmingly confirms their roots trace back to the ancient Israelites. The connection to Israel is not just symbolic. It is embedded in their DNA, their traditions, and their history. Genetic studies leave little room for doubt. The Y-DNA of Ashkenazi Jewish men points to Middle Eastern origins, aligning them with Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews. The mitochondrial DNA, which traces maternal lineage, shows some European influence, suggesting that Jewish men migrated to Europe and married local women, who later converted to Judaism. But this does not change the fact that their core ancestry, their faith, and their traditions come from Israel. Historical records further debunk the Khazar theory. While the Khazar Kingdom did exist, and some of its elite did convert to Judaism, there is no evidence that they became the ancestors of modern Ashkenazi Jews. If the Khazars had contributed significantly to the Jewish gene pool, we would see large traces of Central Asian DNA. But we do not. And yet, despite the clear facts, the Khazar theory refuses to die. Why? One reason is political. If Ashkenazi Jews were proven to be non-Israelite in origin, some argue that this would weaken their historical claim to Israel. This theory has been used by those who deny Israel's legitimacy, pushing the false idea that Jews have no real connection to the land. But this is nothing more than an attempt to rewrite history. The Jewish presence in Israel spans thousands of years, long before the Khazar Kingdom ever existed. Another reason is the fascination with lost civilizations. The idea that a mysterious empire of Jewish warriors once ruled Central Asia is captivating. Some historians and researchers explore the theory simply because it is intriguing. But interest does not equal truth. A compelling story is not the same as historical fact. And so, the Jewish people remain, a nation that has survived exile, persecution, and genocide. Their story is not just about genetics or history. It is about resilience, faith, and an unbreakable bond with their homeland. Israel is not just a place on a map. It is the heart of Jewish identity. To deny the Jewish connection to Israel is to deny their history, their suffering, and their survival. The Ashkenazi Jews, like all Jewish communities, have carried their traditions through the darkest times. They have prayed facing Jerusalem, celebrated holidays that commemorate their ancient past, and endured exile after exile, always holding on to the dream of return. And so, now you know the truth. The Khazar theory is a myth, one that has been debunked by science and history alike. The Ashkenazi Jews are not outsiders to Israel. They are its children, just as their ancestors were before them. Their journey took them through Europe, but their origins remain the same. They are Israelites, not Khazars. This is why it is so important to question the narratives we hear. History is often rewritten to serve political agendas, but the truth is always there for those who seek it. And today, you have seen the evidence for yourself. If you found this video eye-opening, make sure to watch until the end, like, and subscribe to the channel. Let's uncover more hidden truths together. Thank you for watching.